Greetings, I am Rick, a 29-year-old man. My former girlfriend, Taylor, is a 27-year-old woman. Our relationship lasted for 3 years, and we were on the cusp of getting married when I stumbled upon a shocking revelation. We initially met when we both applied for positions at the same company. While we were waiting for our respective interviews, we engaged in a conversation, and before leaving, we exchanged contact information. At that moment, I had high hopes of securing the job due to my qualifications. Unfortunately, I didn't get the job, but Taylor did. Despite my setback, we kept in touch. Taylor was very supportive, sharing job leads and interview tips with me. Her assistance helped her secure a position, and a few months later, I found a job as well. Our friendship deepened beyond just a shared career path. What attracted me to Taylor initially was her sharp wit, great sense of humor, and vibrant energy. When I first met her, I had no intention of falling in love. I thought she would make a witty addition to my circle of friends, and we exchanged numbers to keep each other updated about job opportunities. As time passed and we grew closer, our friendship evolved into a romantic relationship. We dated for nearly 3 years. During this time, I discovered something that ultimately led to the downfall of our relationship. During our time together, Taylor and I shared a living space for a year. After that year, she expressed a desire to move back in with her best friend. Her reasoning was that since we would eventually live together after getting married, she wanted to enjoy her single life with her best friend. I didn't see any issue with it and was happy to give her the space she wanted. She would visit me on weekends and occasionally stay over, effectively dividing her time between my place and her best friends. Even without openly declaring our relationship, it was evident to people based on our behavior when we went out together. I had previously been in a committed relationship that ended poorly, leading me to take a break from romance. However, everything changed when I met Taylor. Throughout our relationship, I wholeheartedly supported her in all her endeavors. I encouraged her to pursue courses, work diligently, and invested my all into her success. However, during our time together, I uncovered a shocking truth that ultimately led to the collapse of our relationship. This discovery shook the foundation of our bond and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about her and our future together. Meeting Taylor was a turning point in my life. Before her, I was disillusioned with relationships and focused solely on my career. My previous relationship had ended disastrously, making me wary of opening up to someone new. Taylor, with her infectious energy and supportive nature, slowly helped me lower my defenses. Our bond was more than just romantic, we were best friends who shared everything. From late-night talks about our dreams and fears to planning future adventures, we were inseparable. Our chemistry was palpable, and friends often commented on how perfect we seemed together. When Taylor decided to move back in with her best friend, I understood her desire for independence. I believed that giving her space would strengthen our relationship. However, this period of separation also planted seeds of doubt in my mind. The physical distance between us made me realize how much I relied on her presence for emotional support. During weekends, when Taylor visited, things seemed normal, and we continued to make plans for our future. We discussed marriage, potential homes, and even children. I was convinced that she was the one I wanted to spend my life with. Little did I know that beneath this seemingly perfect facade, there were hidden truths that would shatter my world. One evening, while Taylor was staying over, I accidentally came across a series of messages on her phone. These messages revealed a side of Taylor I had never seen before, one that was involved in deceit and betrayal. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, leaving me devastated and heartbroken. Confronting Taylor about these messages was one of the hardest things I had to do. The trust we had built over 3 years crumbled in an instant. Her explanations and apologies could not erase the pain and betrayal I felt. The foundation of our relationship, which I thought was unshakable, was destroyed. In the aftermath of this discovery, I had to reevaluate my life and my choices. The person I had invested so much time and emotion into was not who I thought she was. It was a painful lesson, but it also taught me the importance of trust and honesty in a relationship. As I move forward from this experience, I carry with me the memories of the good times we shared and the lessons learned from the heartbreak. Taylor will always be a significant part of my past, but I am now focused on healing and rebuilding my life. The journey ahead is uncertain, but I am determined to find happiness and trust once again. By the 2nd year of our relationship, I was completely convinced that Taylor was the woman I wanted to marry because she met all the criteria I had for an ideal partner. She demonstrated an exceptional ability to care for me and express her love, handling various aspects of our relationship with great skill and dedication. In the first year of living together, we split our expenses and household responsibilities equally. This mutual cooperation made our domestic life both manageable and enjoyable. However, once she began alternating her time between my house and her best friend's place, our arrangement for sharing bills came to an abrupt end. During special occasions such as anniversaries and her birthdays, I took great care in selecting gifts that I knew would make her happy. Honestly, she was my top priority at all times. I made numerous sacrifices and did everything I could to maintain our joyful relationship. My actions weren't driven by a desperate need to be with her, but rather by a deep appreciation for our relationship and a desire to ensure it was filled with peace and happiness. I vividly recall an evening before Taylor started splitting her time between our home and her best friends. While watching a movie, she suddenly asked me an unusual question. She inquired about my thoughts on open relationships. I jokingly replied that people in open relationships might not truly be in love with each other, and we both laughed at my remark. However, she took offense and argued against my statement, asserting that many couples in open relationships loved each other deeply. She accused me of having old-fashioned views, but I didn't take her criticism seriously and quickly changed the subject. At the time, I thought it was just a passing conversation and didn't dwell on it. In hindsight, I realized that moment could have been a significant indicator of her thoughts and feelings, but my focus on maintaining our happiness made me overlook its importance. Throughout our relationship, Taylor and I had many deep conversations about life, love, and our future together. We discussed our dreams, our fears, and our plans for the years ahead. She seemed genuinely interested in building a life with me, and I trusted her completely. Despite the challenges posed by her splitting time between two homes, I believed our relationship was strong enough to withstand any test. During this period, I continued to prioritize her needs and happiness above my own. I encouraged her to pursue her goals and dreams, offering support in every way possible. My dedication to our relationship was unwavering, and I was determined to see it flourish. However, her growing interest in open relationships was a topic we never fully revisited, and it lingered as an unresolved issue in the background of our otherwise happy life. As I reflect on our time together, I understand that our relationship had complexities I didn't fully grasp at the time. Taylor's need for independence and her thoughts on open relationships were aspects of her personality that I didn't fully appreciate or understand. My focus on keeping our relationship happy and peaceful sometimes blinded me to the underlying issues that needed to be addressed. In hindsight, I recognize that our relationship required more open and honest communication about our desires and boundaries. My initial dismissal of her questions about open relationships might have been a mistake, one that prevented us from having a deeper understanding of each other's needs and perspectives. Despite my best efforts to create a harmonious and loving relationship, there were underlying tensions and unresolved issues that eventually led to its downfall. As I move forward from this experience, I carry with me the lessons learned and the memories of the good times we shared. Taylor will always be a significant part of my past, but I am now focused on healing and finding a future filled with mutual respect, understanding, and genuine love. The journey ahead may be challenging, but I am determined to grow from this experience and build healthier, more open relationships in the future. Reflecting on what transpired has given me a clearer vision of what I need in a partner and how to better communicate my own needs and boundaries. This newfound self-awareness will guide me as I navigate the complexities of future relationships, ensuring that I build a foundation of trust and mutual respect from the very beginning. Through these reflections, I aim to create a stronger, more resilient bond with a future partner, one that can withstand the tests of time and change. On a different occasion, while we were enjoying dinner together, Taylor introduced the concept of us entering an open relationship. Initially, I thought she was joking, but her earnest expression quickly made me realize she was quite serious. At that moment, I unequivocally rejected the idea of an open relationship and expressed my preference to remain single rather than pursue such an arrangement. Following that conversation, she never brought up the subject again, and I chose not to think about it further. Before our relationship even began, I had clearly communicated to Taylor that the one thing I could not tolerate in a relationship was a partner who engaged in cheating or dishonesty. I made it explicitly clear that any instance of infidelity would be unforgivable to me. This was a point I emphasized repeatedly because of the pain I had endured in a previous relationship. I was determined to protect my heart from being broken again by infidelity, so I was committed to doing everything possible to ensure our relationship stayed strong. After Taylor moved out, I began to notice changes in her behavior. It started with her frequently canceling our plans. We had a tradition of going out every Friday evening, whether it was for a casual walk in the park, grabbing food from a truck, or enjoying a meal at a nice restaurant. Since she no longer lived with me, the plan was for her to come to my place, and we would go out together. However, she began making me wait for hours. When I called her, she often didn't answer or asked to reschedule due to supposed urgent matters. Occasionally, she would cancel just minutes before we were supposed to meet, claiming she thought she had informed me earlier. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs, but I believed all her explanations. I even encouraged her to work less since most of her excuses seemed to revolve around her job. Despite the frustration of her frequent cancellations, I didn't let it bother me because I prided myself on being an understanding boyfriend. A year after she moved out, Taylor and I became increasingly distant, even though we lived in the same town. It felt as if we were in a long-distance relationship because she had received a promotion at work that consumed more of her time. She started traveling frequently with her team, and our face-to-face meetings became rare when she was in town. Our primary means of communication became WhatsApp messages. Sometimes, I sent her messages that went unread as she continued to update her WhatsApp status. During this time, I tried to maintain a positive outlook and support her career ambitions. I understood that her new job responsibilities were demanding, and I didn't want to add to her stress. However, the growing distance between us began to weigh heavily on my mind. I missed our time together and longed for the days when we were inseparable. Despite the red flags, I convinced myself that her behavior was justified by her busy schedule. I continued to make excuses for her, attributing her lack of communication and frequent cancellations to the pressures of her job. In my heart, I wanted to believe that our love was strong enough to overcome these challenges. I remained patient and understanding, hoping that things would eventually return to normal. However, as months passed, the emotional distance between us only grew. The intimate connection we once shared felt strained, and our conversations became increasingly superficial. I began to question whether her feelings for me had changed. The thought of losing her was painful, but I didn't want to confront the possibility of infidelity or a shift in her affections. In retrospect, I realized that I had been ignoring the signs of a deteriorating relationship. Taylor's sudden interest in open relationships, her frequent cancellations, and the emotional distance were all indicators that something was wrong. My refusal to acknowledge these signs stemmed from my desire to maintain the illusion of a happy and committed relationship. Eventually, the truth became undeniable. The foundation of trust and mutual respect that we had built was crumbling. As I reflect on this experience, I understand the importance of honest communication and recognizing the signs of an unhealthy relationship. I learned that it is essential to address issues head-on rather than ignoring them in the hope that they will resolve themselves. Moving forward, I am committed to building relationships based on trust, transparency, and mutual respect. The lessons learned from my time with Taylor will guide me in creating healthier and more fulfilling connections in the future. While the journey may be challenging, I am determined to find a partner who values honesty and open communication as much as I do. The journey ahead is uncertain, but I am prepared to face it with the wisdom gained from my past experiences. I aim to create a stronger, more resilient bond with a future partner, one that can withstand the tests of time and change. Through these reflections, I will strive to build a foundation of trust and mutual respect from the very beginning, ensuring that the love we share is genuine and enduring. When the situation became unbearable, I reached out to Taylor's best friend, hoping to see some changes. Unfortunately, this did not lead to any improvements. Later, I had a conversation with Taylor regarding the diminishing quality of our relationship. She attributed the decline to her demanding work schedule, which I found peculiar because her job shouldn't have required that much time. Even freelancers handling multiple clients seemed to have more free time than Taylor did. After our talk, Taylor promised to make changes, and for the next 2 months, she did. She began calling more frequently, responding promptly to my messages, and keeping me updated about her daily activities. She even resumed spending weekends at my place, which she had stopped doing for a long time. These changes brought happiness and made me feel that we were getting back on track. Not wanting to interfere with her progress, I refrained from suggesting that she find a new job. Instead, we worked together to manage her busy schedule. At this point, I felt it was the right time to take a significant step in our relationship. Taylor had never brought up the topic of marriage, and I assumed she wanted me to broach the subject, believing it was my role as the man. So, I purchased an expensive engagement ring and planned to propose the next time she visited for the weekend. On that particular weekend, she arrived on Friday as usual, and we decided to dine at an upscale restaurant. I brought the engagement ring with me, intending to propose during our dinner. However, something inside me stopped me from proposing to her at the restaurant as planned. Later that night, when we returned home, she fell asleep in the middle of our usual Friday movie night. I could tell she was exhausted because she had been complaining about being tired since she arrived. Out of love and concern, I gently guided her to the bedroom and tucked her into bed, wanting her to rest. As I sat alone, reflecting on our relationship, I realized how much her presence meant to me. Despite the recent strains, I still wanted to spend my life with her. The next morning, we talked about our future again. Taylor assured me that she would continue to make efforts to balance her work and our relationship. During this time, I did everything I could to support her and adapt to her needs. I even adjusted my own schedule to better align with hers, hoping this would help reduce some of the pressure she was under. My love for Taylor drove me to be as understanding and accommodating as possible. As the weeks went by, the improvements in our relationship became more noticeable. Taylor seemed happier and more relaxed, and our connection deepened. We started planning more activities together and spent more quality time as a couple. It felt like we were finally moving forward, and I regained the confidence to think about our future together. One evening, while we were taking a walk in the park, I suggested the idea of taking a short vacation to unwind and reconnect. Taylor was enthusiastic about the idea, and we began planning a trip. This getaway turned out to be exactly what we needed. It allowed us to escape the daily stressors and focus on each other. During the trip, we had deep conversations and reignited the spark that had initially brought us together. Upon returning from our vacation, I felt more certain than ever that Taylor was the one I wanted to marry. Her efforts to improve our relationship and the love we shared made me confident in taking the next step. I decided to propose to her in a more intimate and meaningful setting. A few weeks later, I arranged a special evening at home. I prepared her favorite meal and created a cozy, romantic atmosphere. As we enjoyed dinner, I expressed my feelings and how much she meant to me. Then, I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. Taylor's eyes filled with tears of joy as she said yes, and in that moment, all the struggles we had faced seemed worth it. Our engagement marked the beginning of a new chapter in our lives. We continued to work on our relationship, communicating openly and honestly about our needs and expectations. The lessons learned from our past challenges strengthened our bond and prepared us for a future filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. As we planned our wedding and looked forward to our life together, I knew that we had overcome significant hurdles, and our commitment to each other would see us through whatever lay ahead. When I returned to continue watching the movie we had started, I noticed her phone wedged in the old couch cushions, so I retrieved it for her. While watching the film, I considered checking her phone but initially resisted the temptation. In the early stages of our relationship, we had freely accessed each other's phones because we had nothing to hide. After some internal debate, I decided to grab her phone, but it required her fingerprint for access. To be honest, I was too lazy to go back to the bedroom to get her fingerprint, and I was trying hard not to be overly intrusive. Nevertheless, my curiosity got the better of me, and when I finally unlocked her phone using her fingerprint, I was shocked by what I discovered. My initial destination was her call log. Besides our conversations and those with her best friend, I wanted to see if she was regularly in contact with someone else. My search didn't get far because I stumbled upon a contact labeled Daddy. This puzzled me because her father had passed away, and she wasn't particularly close to any other older family members except her mom. I was certain it wasn't my number either, as my contact was saved with my name just above it. She had exchanged calls with this Daddy 3 times during the day and shortly before arriving at my apartment that evening. Driven by curiosity, I checked her WhatsApp to find this contact, and there it was, right at the top of her messages. She had unread messages from Daddy because she had fallen asleep. When I opened these messages, I saw they had been communicating throughout the evening, even while we were at the restaurant. At first glance, I could tell something was off about their chat due to the emojis they used. So, I decided to go through their entire conversation from the beginning. To my shock, I discovered that Taylor was in a relationship with her boss while we were still together. As I read further into their chat history, the nature of their relationship became more evident. Their messages were filled with affectionate terms, intimate emojis, and plans for secret meetups. It was clear that this wasn't just a professional relationship, it was much more personal and intimate. The realization hit me hard, and I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and sadness. I couldn't believe that Taylor, whom I trusted deeply, had been hiding such a significant part of her life from me. The fact that she was in an affair with her boss while pretending to be committed to our relationship was devastating. I sat there, stunned, not knowing how to process the information I had just uncovered. As I pieced together the timeline of their interactions, it became apparent that this affair had been ongoing for quite some time. Their messages indicated that they had shared many moments together, both during and outside of work hours. The level of deception was overwhelming, and I felt completely blindsided. In the midst of my shock, I started to reflect on the past months and all the times Taylor had been distant or unavailable. Her frequent cancellations, the sudden demands of her job, and her overall change in behavior all began to make sense. The puzzle pieces fit together, painting a clear picture of infidelity and deceit. While I sat there, trying to decide what to do next, I felt a profound sense of loss. The future I had envisioned with Taylor seemed to crumble before my eyes. I had been ready to take the next step in our relationship, but now, everything was tainted by her betrayal. My heart ached, and my mind raced with questions and doubts. As the night wore on, I realized that confronting Taylor was inevitable. I needed to hear her side of the story, even though I already knew the painful truth. The evidence on her phone was undeniable, and there was no way she could talk her way out of it. I felt a sense of dread about the upcoming confrontation, but I knew it was necessary for my own peace of mind. When Taylor woke up the next morning, she could tell something was wrong. I sat her down and showed her the messages I had found, demanding an explanation. Her face went pale, and she struggled to find the words to explain herself. The truth was out, and there was no escaping it. Taylor admitted to the affair, confessing that it had started several months ago. She tried to justify her actions, blaming the pressures of her job and the distance that had grown between us. But her excuses fell flat, and the damage was already done. Our relationship, built on trust and love, had been irreparably broken. In the days that followed, I wrestled with my emotions and tried to make sense of what had happened. The betrayal cut deep, and the road to healing seemed long and uncertain. I knew I had to move forward, but the path ahead felt daunting. The lessons learned from this experience would shape my future relationships, teaching me the importance of trust, honesty, and communication. Ultimately, I decided to end things with Taylor. The pain of her betrayal was too much to overcome, and I needed to prioritize my own well-being. As I moved on from this chapter of my life, I carried with me the hard-earned wisdom and the resolve to build healthier, more transparent relationships in the future. The journey to healing was filled with ups and downs, but I remained committed to learning from this painful experience. I focused on rebuilding my life, surrounding myself with supportive friends and family who helped me navigate the difficult emotions. In time, I began to find peace and rediscover my sense of self-worth. As I ventured into new relationships, I approached them with a renewed sense of caution and a deeper understanding of the importance of trust. The scars from my past remained, but they served as a reminder of the lessons I had learned. I was determined to create a future where honesty, respect, and mutual understanding were at the core of my relationships. Looking back, I realized that Taylor's betrayal, while painful, had ultimately made me stronger. It had taught me valuable lessons about resilience and the necessity of setting boundaries. With these lessons in mind, I moved forward with hope, ready to embrace a future filled with genuine connections and lasting love. Through this difficult journey, I came to understand that every experience, no matter how painful, carries the potential for growth and transformation. I learned to trust my instincts more, to communicate openly, and to value my own well-being. These insights would guide me as I continued to navigate the complexities of love and relationships, ensuring that I built connections rooted in authenticity and mutual respect. Based on what I read, Taylor had informed her boss that she was in an open relationship with me until we got married. Their conversation spanned a long period, and I got chills when I realized their relationship had started around the same time she began asking me questions about open relationships. But that wasn't all. Taylor had undergone an abortion for him and received significant compensation, including a job promotion. I felt utterly devastated and wished I could unsee everything I had just read. What made it even more painful was that they mentioned me in some of their conversations, saying all sorts of derogatory things about me. As I continued reading, I learned that it was her boss, referred to as Daddy, who had suggested she spend weekends with me. She hadn't wanted to do it on her own. He had asked her to do it to prevent me from feeling jealous that someone else was taking up more of her time. After a lot of persuasion from him, she reluctantly agreed. He also mentioned that he wanted her to stay busy with me so that he could have more time for his own family. He explained that his family had been complaining about his absence, and his wife was starting to suspect he was cheating, which he wanted to avoid. The entire situation seemed incredibly absurd to me, and it hurt deeply to discover that the calls, messages, and updates weren't genuinely from Taylor. That night, I sat on the couch, unsure of what to do next. I considered various ways of confronting and exposing her at that moment. I even thought about waking her up with a bucket of cold water and demanding an explanation. However, I knew I had anger issues, and that approach would likely lead to physical assault and legal trouble. So, I decided to take a walk to clear my head and think more rationally. Before leaving the house, I exported their entire chat and sent it to myself, then marked the last messages as unread. After walking for hours without a specific destination, I came up with an idea similar to something I had read on Reddit. It was challenging to pull off, but I managed it. Throughout the entire weekend, I pretended as if nothing had happened. It wasn't until she left on Sunday evening that I put my plan into action. The next week, on a Tuesday, I visited Taylor's workplace. Because it was a corporate setting, I had to wait in the lobby. During my wait, I distributed printed copies of the conversation between Taylor and her boss to everyone I encountered, including the receptionist. By the time Taylor finally came to meet me, many people had received these copies and were in utter shock. As Taylor approached me, her face was a mix of confusion and panic. I handed her a copy of the printed conversation and watched as her expression changed from confusion to horror. She quickly realized the extent of the situation. Around us, whispers and shocked gasps filled the lobby as more and more people read the damning evidence. She tried to pull me aside to talk privately, but I refused. I wanted everyone to see the truth. I wanted everyone to know what she had done. She pleaded with me to stop, but I stood firm. The betrayal was too deep, and I needed her to feel the same level of humiliation and pain that I had felt. After ensuring that the copies had been widely distributed, I left the building. As I walked away, I felt a mix of emotions. There was a sense of vindication, but also a deep sadness. The person I had loved and trusted had deceived me in the worst possible way. It would take a long time to heal from this, but I knew I had taken a step in reclaiming my self-respect and dignity. In the days that followed, I heard through mutual friends that Taylor's affair had become the talk of the office. Her reputation was in shambles, and her boss faced severe repercussions as well. It wasn't the ideal resolution, but it brought some measure of justice. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized the importance of trust and honesty in a relationship. The experience taught me to never ignore red flags and to always prioritize my well-being. Moving forward, I vowed to build relationships based on mutual respect and transparency. The journey to healing was arduous, but it was a necessary path. Surrounding myself with supportive friends and family, I slowly rebuilt my life. The scars from this betrayal remained, but they served as a reminder of my resilience and strength. In time, I found peace and was ready to embrace a future where I could trust and be trusted again. Through this difficult journey, I came to understand that every experience, no matter how painful, carries the potential for growth and transformation. I learned to trust my instincts more, to communicate openly, and to value my own well-being. These insights would guide me as I continued to navigate the complexities of love and relationships, ensuring that I built connections rooted in authenticity and mutual respect. As I moved forward, I held on to the lessons I had learned, using them to forge a brighter and more secure future. The pain of the past no longer dictated my present. Instead, it served as a foundation upon which I could build stronger, more genuine relationships. With each step, I moved closer to a life filled with the kind of trust and love I had always hoped to find. One guy in her office immediately shouted, "I knew it. I kept telling everyone that something suspicious was going on, but you all said I was just talking too much." Taylor was utterly confused, and when she asked what was happening, I handed her a copy of the evidence. The moment she looked at it, she threw the copy aside and tried to grab me. I realized that my actions would likely lead to the news reaching the HR department, potentially putting her job at risk. I enjoyed the way everyone stared at her as I exited the room, and as she chased after me. Just as I was about to get into my car and drive away, she caught up to me, held onto my arm, and insisted that she could explain everything. When I arrived home, she hurried out of a taxi without shoes and came to plead with me. She persistently banged on my door, which attracted the attention of my neighbors. Although it was frustrating, I used the opportunity to toss out the few belongings she had left at my place through the window and told her to go be with her daddy. She still refused to leave, and an hour later, her best friend showed up. Her best friend tried to talk to me from outside, but when I didn't respond, she collected the items I had thrown out and drove Taylor away in her car. Since then, Taylor has been continuously texting and reaching out to all my friends, trying to persuade me to take her back. It's quite bold of her to think we could ever be together again after everything she's done. Currently, the situation is this: despite all her actions, I still have feelings for her. However, I no longer wish to be in a relationship with her. I've been attempting to heal and move forward, but she's been pleading with me to meet and talk. The entire ordeal left me emotionally exhausted. Watching her chase after me, trying to explain, only added to the confusion and hurt. I couldn't believe her audacity to ask for another chance after everything she had put me through. At home, her relentless knocking on my door became a spectacle for my neighbors. It was as if she couldn't grasp that her actions had consequences, and she kept pushing for a reconciliation. Throwing her belongings out the window felt like a symbolic act of closure for me, even if it was somewhat dramatic. Her best friend showing up was another twist in this saga. Despite her friend's attempts to mediate, I remained unresponsive. Seeing them collect Taylor's things and leave felt like a small victory, a step towards regaining control of my life. But Taylor didn't stop. She continued her barrage of messages and tried to get through to my friends, hoping they would persuade me to give her another chance. Her persistence was both annoying and baffling. How could she think we could just go back to the way things were? Inside, my feelings were conflicted. Despite her betrayal, part of me still cared for her. Yet, the rational part of my mind knew that staying with her would only bring more pain. I needed to move on, to find peace and rebuild my life without her in it. Every day has been a struggle to heal and move forward. Her constant pleas for a meeting, to talk things over, make it harder to maintain my resolve. But I know deep down that reconciliation isn't possible. The trust was broken beyond repair, and no amount of talking could fix that. Reflecting on everything, I realized the importance of respecting myself and my boundaries. It's crucial to recognize when a relationship has become toxic and to have the strength to walk away, no matter how difficult it might be. As I continue this journey of healing, I hold on to the lessons I've learned. Moving forward, I will build a future where I am valued and respected. The past will not dictate my future. Instead, it will guide me to make better choices and to cherish the love and trust that a healthy relationship deserves. In the end, I am determined to find happiness and peace. The road ahead might be long and challenging, but I am ready to face it with newfound strength and resilience. Taylor's chapter in my life is over, and I am focused on writing new, better ones filled with genuine connections and unwavering trust. Through this difficult journey, I came to understand that every experience, no matter how painful, carries the potential for growth and transformation. I learned to trust my instincts more, to communicate openly, and to value my own well-being. These insights will guide me as I continue to navigate the complexities of love and relationships, ensuring that I build connections rooted in authenticity and mutual respect. As I moved forward, I held on to the lessons I had learned, using them to forge a brighter and more secure future. The pain of the past no longer dictated my present. Instead, it served as a foundation upon which I could build stronger, more genuine relationships. With each step, I moved closer to a life filled with the kind of trust and love I had always hoped to find. Embracing these lessons, I strive to create a future where trust, honesty, and respect are the cornerstones of every relationship. Each day is a step towards healing, a step towards a better, more fulfilled version of myself. I am ready to embrace this journey with courage and hope, leaving behind the pain and betrayal to welcome a future filled with genuine love and true happiness. It might seem unwise, but I have scheduled a meeting with Taylor next week, and I am uncertain about what to do. I can't escape the memories we shared in my apartment, almost everything there reminds me of her. My heart longs for her, but being in a relationship with her would be detrimental to me. Update 1. 2 days ago, Taylor and I met as planned. As soon as she saw me, she broke down in tears and created a scene. I felt quite embarrassed because we were in a public park, and I tried to maintain my composure, acting as if everything was normal. Once we settled down, she confessed that she had never believed in monogamy from the beginning. She thought I'd be the type of person who would be open to an open relationship. As our relationship progressed, however, when she suggested the idea and I firmly rejected it, she felt disappointed and decided to pursue her own desires. It's somewhat amusing that she believed I'd never uncover her affair. She even admitted that she never intended to inform me and planned to end the affair once I proposed or we got married. But her words didn't match what I had discovered from her WhatsApp messages. When I confronted her about the termination, she began crying and apologizing. She admitted that the pregnancy was mine, but she was desperate for the promotion. So, she fabricated a story to her boss, claiming she was pregnant by him because she knew he wouldn't let her keep the baby. To terminate the pregnancy, she negotiated for a promotion and a substantial sum of money to travel to another state for the procedure. As Taylor explained all of this, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Her confession added a new layer of complexity to an already tangled web of deceit. I listened in disbelief as she justified her actions, trying to understand how someone I loved could make such choices. Her belief that I would be open to an open relationship was perplexing. I had always made my stance on monogamy clear, yet she had convinced herself otherwise. Her decision to continue the affair, thinking I would never find out, was both naive and hurtful. The notion that she intended to stop the affair after we got married or once I proposed felt like a slap in the face. It showed a complete disregard for my feelings and the trust we had built. As she sobbed and apologized, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of pity and anger. Her desperation for a promotion had led her to deceive not only me but also her boss. The fact that she used our unborn child as a pawn in her scheme was particularly heartbreaking. She had manipulated the situation to her advantage, showing a side of her I never knew existed. I tried to maintain my composure as she continued to explain. The public setting made it even more challenging to process everything she was saying. People around us were starting to notice the emotional exchange, adding to my discomfort. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and deeply hurt. Despite her apologies and explanations, I couldn't see a way forward with Taylor. The betrayal was too deep, and the trust was irrevocably broken. Her actions had caused irreparable damage to our relationship, and no amount of apologies could change that. When the conversation finally ended, I left the park feeling emotionally drained. The meeting had provided some answers but had also left me with more questions about her character and the future. I knew I had to focus on healing and moving forward without her in my life. In the days that followed, I reflected on the meeting and the revelations. It was clear that Taylor's actions were driven by a combination of desperation and misguided beliefs. While I still had feelings for her, I understood that staying in the relationship would only cause more harm. I started to take steps to rebuild my life. I surrounded myself with supportive friends and family, who helped me navigate the emotional turmoil. I began to find solace in new activities and hobbies, slowly rediscovering my sense of self-worth. The experience taught me valuable lessons about trust, boundaries, and self-respect. I realized the importance of being true to my values and not compromising on my principles. Moving forward, I vowed to build relationships based on mutual respect, honesty, and trust. Although the road to healing was long and challenging, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I was determined to create a future where I could find genuine love and happiness. Taylor's chapter in my life was closed, and I was ready to embrace new beginnings with an open heart and a stronger sense of self. Through this journey, I learned that every painful experience has the potential to lead to growth and transformation. I came to understand the importance of self-care and the power of resilience. With each passing day, I felt more empowered to face the future and to build a life filled with authentic connections and true love. In the end, the ordeal with Taylor became a catalyst for my personal growth. It pushed me to reevaluate my priorities and to seek out healthier, more fulfilling relationships. I knew that I deserved better, and I was committed to finding it. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to embrace it with courage and optimism, knowing that I had emerged stronger from the experience. Embracing these lessons, I strive to create a future where trust, honesty, and respect are the cornerstones of every relationship. Each day is a step towards healing, a step towards a better, more fulfilled version of myself. I am ready to embrace this journey with courage and hope, leaving behind the pain and betrayal to welcome a future filled with genuine love and true happiness. At this point, I was filled with serious doubts about whether she was being honest, and it deeply hurt me to think she intended to deceive me until we got married. She, more than anyone, knew how protective I was of her well-being. She was aware that I would never agree to share her with anyone else, yet she had been unfaithful to me with her boss. One person mentioned that I had asked her what she wanted, and when I did, she expressed a desire for us to return to how things used to be. I explained to her that this was impossible because she had squandered her only opportunity, and no matter how much I loved her, we could never return to the way things were. Upon hearing this, she immediately stood up and caused a scene. She began shouting at me, using harsh words, and claimed that she had been enduring me for years, implying that I owed her. She argued that she had been doing me favors and now it was her turn to receive something in return. Then she walked out on me. At that time, I was unaware that she had lost her job and that her boss had also been dismissed. She desperately wanted me to take her back, which explained why she was trying everything possible. Additionally, I recently discovered that her best friend was aware of her affair but chose to remain silent. They both conspired to deceive me and kept me in the dark. Just this evening, she called and announced her intention to visit tomorrow, insisting that we would not break up unless she permitted it. Her behavior is completely out of character and quite unsettling. I warned her not to come or else I would involve the police. Realizing that she had planned to deceive me until marriage was like a dagger to my heart. She knew how much I cared for her and how protective I was of her well-being. Yet, she had chosen to be unfaithful with her boss, fully aware that I would never be okay with sharing her with anyone else. When someone mentioned that I had asked her about her desires, I recalled how she had expressed a wish for us to revert to our old ways. I made it clear to her that this was not possible because she had wasted her one chance. Despite my deep love for her, we could never return to how things were before. Her reaction was immediate and explosive. She stood up, caused a scene, and started shouting at me with harsh words. She accused me of making her endure hardship for years, suggesting that I owed her. She argued that she had been doing favors for me and now it was her turn to receive something in return. After this outburst, she stormed out on me. Unbeknownst to me at the time, she had lost her job and her boss had also been dismissed. Her attempts to reconcile now made sense, as she was trying desperately to get me back. Moreover, I recently learned that her best friend had known about the affair but chose to stay silent. They both had conspired to deceive me and kept me in the dark. This evening, she called and declared her intention to visit tomorrow, insisting that our breakup would not happen unless she allowed it. Her behavior was completely out of character and very unsettling. I warned her not to come, threatening to involve the police if she did. The depth of her deceit and the realization that she planned to keep me in the dark until we got married was devastating. She knew how much I cherished and protected her, yet she chose to betray that trust by cheating with her boss. This betrayal cut deeply, knowing she was fully aware that I would never accept sharing her with another person. When it was mentioned that I had asked her what she wanted, I remembered her saying she wished we could go back to how we were before. I had to tell her that was impossible, as she had already wasted her one chance. Despite my deep love for her, returning to our previous state was out of the question. Her response was dramatic and aggressive. She stood up, made a scene, and yelled at me with harsh words. She claimed she had tolerated me for years, suggesting I owed her something. She argued that she had been doing me favors and now it was her turn to receive something in return. After this confrontation, she left abruptly. Unbeknownst to me at the time, she had lost her job and her boss had also been dismissed. Her desperation to get back together made sense in this context, as she was trying everything possible to win me over. Additionally, I found out her best friend knew about the affair but chose to remain silent, conspiring with Taylor to deceive me. Tonight, she called and said she planned to visit tomorrow, insisting we wouldn't break up unless she allowed it. Her behavior was extremely unsettling and out of character. I told her not to come, warning that I would call the police if necessary. The pain of realizing she intended to deceive me until marriage was overwhelming. She knew how much I valued and protected her, yet she chose to cheat on me with her boss. The betrayal felt even worse knowing she was aware I would never accept sharing her with another person. When it was brought up that I had asked her what she wanted, I recalled her saying she wanted us to go back to how we were. I had to make it clear that this was impossible because she had already blown her one chance. Despite my deep love for her, we could never return to the way things were. Her reaction was immediate and intense. She stood up, caused a scene, and yelled harsh words at me. She claimed she had been enduring me for years, implying I owed her something. She argued that she had done me favors and now it was her turn to receive something in return. After this outburst, she walked out on me. I didn't know at the time that she had lost her job and that her boss had also been fired. Her desperation to get back together made sense in this context, as she was trying everything possible to win me over. Additionally, I found out her best friend knew about the affair but chose to remain silent, conspiring with her to keep me in the dark. This evening, she called and declared her intent to visit tomorrow, saying we wouldn't break up unless she allowed it. Her behavior was completely out of character and unsettling. I warned her not to come, threatening to call the police if she did. Realizing the depth of her deceit and that she planned to deceive me until marriage was incredibly painful. She knew how much I cared for her and protected her, yet she chose to betray me by cheating with her boss. This betrayal cut deeply, knowing she was aware I would never accept sharing her with another person. Update 2, true to her word, Taylor came over to my place. During our dialogue, I officially concluded our relationship, but her reaction caught me off guard. She laughed heartily. She brazenly confessed that she felt no remorse for her betrayal, arguing that it was all for her career and that it was harmless. This declaration confirmed my suspicion that she would continue her unfaithfulness even if we tied the knot. Enraged, I took hold of her arm, intending to guide her out of my apartment. However, she shoved me forcefully, causing me to fall and hurt my arm. To my complete astonishment, she then extracted an enormous hammer from her handbag and began a destructive spree in my home. She wrecked the television, my new laptop, and several other belongings. Fearing for my safety, I immediately dialed the police to report the assault. As Taylor continued her destructive path through my house, the police arrived, responding to a call from a neighbor who had overheard our heated exchange and the loud crashes inside my home. Even my neighbor was stunned by Taylor's conduct. Eventually, the police stepped in and took Taylor into custody. Due to my fall and the subsequent injury to my left arm, I needed medical attention. Once I recovered, I decided to take legal action against Taylor for two primary reasons: to recover the medical expenses I had incurred and to hold her accountable for the extensive damage she had inflicted on my apartment. In the aftermath of this chaotic and violent episode, I experienced a sense of relief knowing that justice was being pursued. The entire ordeal had been both emotionally and physically exhausting, but seeking legal recourse seemed like the appropriate course of action to ensure Taylor faced the consequences of her actions. When we found ourselves in court, the judge requested tangible proof, such as photographs of the damages and my medical bills, which amounted to almost $7,000. The financial burden was so significant that I couldn't manage to replace everything on my own. After listening to my account, the judge then directed her attention to Taylor, asking her several questions. Taylor openly admitted to causing the damage in my home, explaining that she had smashed my laptop and ruined other items as a form of retaliation for losing her job. The judge was noticeably angered and ruled against her. As I relay this update, Taylor has been mandated to replace my laptop, fix the appliances she damaged, and she has started reimbursing me for the medical expenses. She now understands that reconciliation between us is out of the question, and this realization has left her in a state of despair. Adding to her woes, she is unable to secure new employment in our town due to being blacklisted. I derive a sense of justice and satisfaction from knowing that she is facing the repercussions of her actions. Alright, that was a dramatic story. Let's transition to another compelling one. Stay tuned as we delve into it. My husband, who is 38 years old, and I, who am 37, have been married for several years and share a 5-year-old son. Throughout our marriage, we have consistently dealt with challenges, primarily stemming from his demanding work schedule. He is away for a minimum of 10 hours each day, 6 days a week, leaving me with the feeling that I am essentially raising our child on my own. This situation has bred a lot of resentment and issues in our relationship. Whenever I have suggested he reduce his working hours, he counters that he would if I were willing to take on a higher-paying job instead of my current part-time position. There are particular circumstances that prevent me from seeking full-time employment, which I won't elaborate on here. I'm providing this context to offer a comprehensive view of our marriage rather than placing all the blame on myself. Regarding my part-time job, I am employed as a bookkeeper at the local library. My working hours are flexible, typically involving 3-hour shifts on weekdays while our son is at nursery school. Although the pay is modest, I value the sense of independence my job provides. A while ago, we hired a new employee, a young, attractive man in his 20s. The head librarian, an unmarried woman in her 40s, along with the other female staff members, showed a keen interest in him since he was the only appealing male working at the library. However, his attention seemed to be directed toward me. From the very first day, I could tell he noticed me. We began to bond over casual conversations and shared lunches in the break room. He made me feel desired, feminine, and acknowledged, something my husband had stopped doing long ago. The experience was exhilarating, and his youthful charm significantly boosted my confidence. It wasn't long before we found ourselves entangled in an emotional and physical affair. I started extending my work days and hours, leaving my son at the nursery more frequently so I could spend more time at the library. We took advantage of every opportunity to be together and eventually began meeting outside of work as our interactions at the library became too conspicuous. One day, everything came crashing down when my husband unexpectedly showed up at the library looking for me. He had never done this before, and I suspect he had his suspicions. That morning, I had told him I was going to work early, but in reality, I went to my coworker's place for an intimate encounter. I had no idea my husband had come to find me at the library. After our rendezvous, I collected my son and returned home as usual. That evening, my husband came home and inquired about my day at work, marking a significant turning point. The new employee and I had developed a connection that went beyond mere attraction. Our time together at the library evolved into a relationship that made me feel alive and appreciated. This affair provided a stark contrast to the emotional void I experienced in my marriage. Despite the inherent risks, the excitement and validation I received from my young coworker were irresistible. My increased time at the library didn't go unnoticed. My husband's unexpected visit to the library was a pivotal moment. His suspicion led him to check on me, something he had never done before. My deception that morning, pretending to head to work while secretly meeting my coworker, created a ticking time bomb. After our private meeting, I continued with my routine as if nothing had happened, picking up my son and returning home. My husband's question about my day at work that evening signaled the beginning of the end of my clandestine affair. The realization that my husband might know the truth left me feeling exposed and anxious about the future of my marriage and the potential consequences of my actions. A while ago, we hired a new employee, a young, attractive man in his 20s. The head librarian, an unmarried woman in her 40s, along with the other female staff members, showed a keen interest in him since he was the only appealing male working at the library. However, his attention seemed to be directed toward me. From the very first day, I could tell he noticed me. We began to bond over casual conversations and shared lunches in the break room. He made me feel desired, feminine, and acknowledged, something my husband had stopped doing long ago. The experience was exhilarating, and his youthful charm significantly boosted my confidence. It wasn't long before we found ourselves entangled in an emotional and physical affair. I started extending my work days and hours, leaving my son at the nursery more frequently so I could spend more time at the library. We took advantage of every opportunity to be together and eventually began meeting outside of work as our interactions at the library became too conspicuous. One day, everything came crashing down when my husband unexpectedly showed up at the library looking for me. He had never done this before, and I suspect he had his suspicions. That morning, I had told him I was going to work early, but in reality, I went to my coworker's place for an intimate encounter. I had no idea my husband had come to find me at the library. After our rendezvous, I collected my son and returned home as usual. That evening, my husband came home and inquired about my day at work, marking a significant turning point. The new employee and I had developed a connection that went beyond mere attraction. Our time together at the library evolved into a relationship that made me feel alive and appreciated. This affair provided a stark contrast to the emotional void I experienced in my marriage. Despite the inherent risks, the excitement and validation I received from my young coworker were irresistible. My increased time at the library didn't go unnoticed. My husband's unexpected visit to the library was a pivotal moment. His suspicion led him to check on me, something he had never done before. My deception that morning, pretending to head to work while secretly meeting my coworker, created a ticking time bomb. After our private meeting, I continued with my routine as if nothing had happened, picking up my son and returning home. My husband's question about my day at work that evening signaled the beginning of the end of my clandestine affair. The realization that my husband might know the truth left me feeling exposed and anxious about the future of my marriage and the potential consequences of my actions. Completely unaware that my husband had visited my workplace, I launched into a convoluted and ridiculous explanation. He listened quietly, waiting for me to finish, and then calmly revealed that he had indeed been at my workplace that day. A torrent of negative emotions washed over me as I looked at him. Intense guilt and deep remorse engulfed me for having hurt him, and I could only imagine how shattered I would be if he had engaged in a similar affair with another woman. Overcome with these feelings, I broke down and admitted to my shameful infidelity. At first, he stayed composed, but his anger soon erupted. He began calling me names and bombarding me with probing questions. I managed to answer some of his inquiries, such as the reasons for and duration of the affair, but found other questions too inappropriate and uncomfortable to address. Through my tears, I expressed my willingness to work on our marriage and regain his trust. Despite my pleas, he remained unmoved, sitting motionless. That night, I slept on the couch, feeling incredibly vulnerable and alone. The next day, he told me he wanted me to leave the house. He called me repulsive and insisted that I should move out, allowing him and our child to be on their own. I packed my things and left the following day, moving into my parents' basement. My parents were horrified by my actions, and my mother-in-law harshly criticized me, using derogatory terms to describe me. Right now, I am at a loss about what to do next. I miss my child, my home, and my husband deeply. All I truly want is to return to the life I had before. I don't blame him for his emotions, and I never intended to cause him harm. Although it might seem odd, the affair was something I felt I needed for my own reasons. Yet, I am beginning to feel resentment once again. According to my mother-in-law, it seems he is seriously considering ending our marriage, and both our families appear to support his decision. I am unsure how I will handle a divorce. I fear my coworkers will not be understanding when they find out, and I dread the public scrutiny. Edit. If you are tempted to engage in immature behavior, please refrain from commenting on posts where people are seeking relationship advice from mature adults. My ex-partner and I first crossed paths during high school, and after completing our college education, we welcomed our only daughter into the world. A year later, we decided to get married. In the beginning, everything was delightful, but as time went on, our relationship began to lose its spark. We encountered a lack of intimacy and dealt with the typical challenges that come with a long-term marriage. Regrettably, I made a selfish decision that eventually led to the downfall of our relationship. I started an affair with a man I met at the gym. What began as harmless flirting quickly escalated. He gave me his phone number, and soon we were texting, arranging secret meetings, and eventually, it turned into a physical relationship. The situation spiraled out of control. I would invite him over when my husband was working late or lie about being at work while I was actually at his place. About a year into the affair, our daughter graduated from college and moved back home. I can't exactly remember how she found out, but she confronted me about the possibility that I was cheating on her father. Initially, I attempted to lie, but my fabrications were failing. In the end, I concocted a story about my supposed unhappiness, which wasn't entirely true, and explained that I loved both her father and my affair partner. I claimed this was my way of finding personal happiness while still allowing her father to be happy. Surprisingly, my emotional plea worked, and she agreed to keep my secret. Her only condition was that I couldn't bring him into our home, so I continued to meet with him at his place. One day, while I was asleep, my ex-partner went through my phone and uncovered everything, all the conversations and pictures with my former affair partner. He also discovered the messages in which I mentioned that our daughter was aware of the affair. This led him to read the texts exchanged with our daughter, where she expressed her hope for my happiness. In the week that followed, I noticed a significant change in his behavior. He barely interacted with our daughter and me, responding with brief and detached replies such as, yes, no, or, I don't care. This shift deeply affected our daughter, as they had always been close, and she began to fear that he had discovered the affair. Then one day, while my daughter and I were watching television, he came home, placed some papers in front of me, and calmly announced that he wanted a divorce. He revealed that he was fully aware of my affair and even mentioned the name of my affair partner. I asked our daughter to leave the room, but he insisted that she stay, reminding us that she had wanted me to be happy. This entire ordeal has left me feeling a mixture of regret and confusion. My actions have caused irreparable damage to our family, and now I am left to face the consequences of my decisions. The prospect of divorce looms over me, and I am unsure how I will cope with the fallout. I dread the judgment from my coworkers and the inevitable public scrutiny that will follow once the truth comes out. My mother-in-law's harsh words and my parents' disappointment only add to my sense of shame and isolation. I deeply miss my child, my home, and my husband. All I truly desire is to return to the life I had before, but I know that is no longer possible. Despite my attempts to find happiness, I have only brought pain and disruption to those I love. Now, I must confront the reality of my actions and navigate the difficult path ahead. When my daughter and I found out about his decision, we were both heartbroken and pleaded for his forgiveness. He shouted that he wanted a divorce and insisted that I sign the papers quickly so he could leave our lives. He believed that my actions showed I didn't love him and that he wasn't a good enough father, given the situation our daughter was involved in. Then, he walked out. The divorce process took approximately 9 months. Throughout this period, I repeatedly begged him to reconsider reconciliation or, at the very least, to forgive our daughter. However, he remained unwavering in his decision to cut all ties with us. Since then, neither my daughter nor I have had any contact with him. She has tried reaching out through texts and calls, but he continually ignores her. Our relationship has also suffered immensely during this time. My daughter went through a severe bout of depression, and we have had several explosive arguments. She has expressed deep regret over covering for me, saying she should have informed her dad as soon as she found out. In moments of anger, she has called me every name imaginable, deeming me the worst mother ever and believing that I have ruined her life. I ended up with the house since it had previously belonged to my parents. My daughter moved out to live with her friends and only communicates with me when she needs something, visiting solely to retrieve items quickly. I have shattered everything and now find myself alone. It's been 3 years since the divorce, and I deeply miss my ex-husband. However, there are 2 significant obstacles. He despises me, and he has remarried and adopted a baby, making reconciliation highly unlikely. To the best of my knowledge, he still does not communicate with our daughter. I am at a loss, wondering if there is anything I can say to him to facilitate contact with our daughter. I am desperate to mend my fractured relationship with her, but I fear everything might be irreparably damaged. Is there any way to heal these wounds, or is our situation beyond repair? I am utterly lost and don't know where to turn. The decisions I made have led to a life filled with regret and sorrow. The weight of my actions is heavy, and I am constantly reminded of the pain I have caused. My daughter's anger and sadness only amplify my guilt. Each day, I hope for a chance to make things right, but the path to redemption seems obscured. Rebuilding trust and repairing relationships seems like an insurmountable task. Yet, I cannot give up on the hope that, someday, I might find a way to mend the broken bonds with my daughter and, perhaps, open a line of communication between her and her father. I wish for guidance and support as I navigate this challenging and heartbreaking journey, seeking any glimmer of hope that we might find healing and forgiveness in the future. When my daughter and I found out about his decision, we were both heartbroken and pleaded for his forgiveness. He shouted that he wanted a divorce and insisted that I sign the papers quickly so he could leave our lives. He believed that my actions showed I didn't love him and that he wasn't a good enough father, given the situation our daughter was involved in. Then, he walked out. The divorce process took approximately 9 months. Throughout this period, I repeatedly begged him to reconsider reconciliation or, at the very least, to forgive our daughter. However, he remained unwavering in his decision to cut all ties with us. Since then, neither my daughter nor I have had any contact with him. She has tried reaching out through texts and calls, but he continually ignores her. Our relationship has also suffered immensely during this time. My daughter went through a severe bout of depression, and we have had several explosive arguments. She has expressed deep regret over covering for me, saying she should have informed her dad as soon as she found out. In moments of anger, she has called me every name imaginable, deeming me the worst mother ever and believing that I have ruined her life. I ended up with the house since it had previously belonged to my parents. My daughter moved out to live with her friends and only communicates with me when she needs something, visiting solely to retrieve items quickly. I have shattered everything and now find myself alone. It's been 3 years since the divorce, and I deeply miss my ex-husband. However, there are 2 significant obstacles. He despises me, and he has remarried and adopted a baby, making reconciliation highly unlikely. To the best of my knowledge, he still does not communicate with our daughter. I am at a loss, wondering if there is anything I can say to him to facilitate contact with our daughter. I am desperate to mend my fractured relationship with her, but I fear everything might be irreparably damaged. Is there any way to heal these wounds, or is our situation beyond repair? I am utterly lost and don't know where to turn. The decisions I made have led to a life filled with regret and sorrow. The weight of my actions is heavy, and I am constantly reminded of the pain I have caused. My daughter's anger and sadness only amplify my guilt. Each day, I hope for a chance to make things right, but the path to redemption seems obscured. Rebuilding trust and repairing relationships seems like an insurmountable task. Yet, I cannot give up on the hope that, someday, I might find a way to mend the broken bonds with my daughter and, perhaps, open a line of communication between her and her father. I wish for guidance and support as I navigate this challenging and heartbreaking journey, seeking any glimmer of hope that we might find healing and forgiveness in the future.
Don't forget to subscribe, like and click on the little bell icon for notifications of new stories.